Yeah. Can you hear me here?
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. Okay, how are we doing today?
Doing great.
You have an option to say no, not good. It's lunch, I understand. I hated lunch sessions in my college, honestly. Okay, so we're doing good so far. Anything you enjoyed throughout the day? Anybody? What was your favorite session? I think we just discussed the lightning talks, right? Or maybe this one. We don't know yet. Okay. So honestly, I'm a little bit nervous. Well, I have to give this talk. That's one reason for sure. But the main reason was having to cross the Canadian border today and entering into US. With all the crazy stories that have been going around, I didn't know what was going to happen. So luckily, I'm here. Half of my journey is done. We'll see if I get back home tomorrow, probably, without any questioning, without any untoward circumstances. So, yeah. All right. You got a brief introduction about myself. Before that, is anybody here interested in knowing how my career unfolded? How did I land into consulting?
Yeah.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. At 3 p.m. after lunch? Okay. You know what? All of you, we will meet at the after party and I'll tell you all about it. Not now.
Thanks for that story.
Yeah. So for now, I'm Anupam. I am visiting from Toronto. It's very nice to be here. It's just grey and dull there, so pleasant break. And I work with PwC in the Toronto office. Today we have a topic which is Teams. Well, not Microsoft Teams, that's for sure. That's one clarification out of the way. The topic, as you would have seen, is unleashing the power, potential, and productivity of teams. Yeah, I have to look at the title myself because it's so big words there. But what we'll do today is we'll try to break it down. I want you today to take away some very key fundamentals that you can utilize every day. Teams is such ubiquitous to all of us, right? From the time we start working in a family, or when you go to school, in a football club, or ice hockey for that matter, up north of the border. So it's really something that we cannot get out of. I can't hear Victor working.
Maybe I'll be your co-model. I'll push a button for you.
All right, no worries. Okay. So for today, we have 4 key agenda. Number 1, we will look at some of the blind checks, the blind spots that we inherently, grow up with. What are some of the preconditioning that we bring into our workplaces, into our communities, into our colleges when we work in teams? We'll look at some of those key factors. Number 2, we will try to break down the concept of teams into very simple key takeaways, right? If you have to look at teams as a black box, what are the key inputs? What does it happen? What does it produce as an output, right? We don't want to leave that to chance. When you look at teams, what mostly happens, it's a very ad hoc decision making that happens. You learn from various sources, but I want to present today what do the studies and research say on teams, so that next time when you're working in teams, when you're putting together your own team as a manager or as a team member, you know what are some of the key things that you should be looking at. Number 3 that we have on our objective is common approaches to building high performance teams. So what are some of the key elements that you should be conscious of when we are targeting to build a high performance team? And last but not the least, the often used and overabused word productivity. We kind of know what that means, but today I want to offer you a fresh lens of how to look at productivity. So with that, let's get started. Are you excited? Or did the outline bore you already? No? Okay. And just FYI, I've got some goodies from all the way from Toronto, so whoever is the most participative here gets to take that home. All right. Oh, I gave that away. Okay. So let's try to understand what teams is. What's the first word that comes to your mind when you think of teams?
Rush.
Rush?
The band.
Okay. What else?
Collaborate. Bank.
People.
People. People, very creative. What else?
Group. Think.
Very good. Okay. You know what comes to my mind when I think of teams sometimes? How many of you know this? All of you? What's the show?
Seinfeld.
Oh, very good. Who's your favorite character there?
Kramer.
Oh my God, thank you. That was my favorite too. So, this is the beauty of working with teams. We work with different individuals who have different personalities, different thought process of how they approach teams. And we don't want, at least the key takeaway from this session is we don't want that to be left to chance or to be left to our intuition and conditioning. So that actually brings me to an example that I would like to share from my organization. I work with PwC. Earlier I worked with Deloitte, so it's all clients and crazy things like that. I have a client which is in the railways industry in Toronto. And it's interesting whenever we have a team meeting, every weekly team meeting, the partner in our project encourages us to share the status update using metaphor of rails. It is no surprise since we are in the railways industry, he wants metaphors of rail to convey how we are doing as a project. And some of the interesting things we have listened, I don't know how the tradition started, to be honest. The project was midway when I joined. So you have teams coming up, people coming up with all the metaphors of updating the status. Please don't use that. Do not blame this session for sharing status updates tomorrow with this, okay? So the train has left the station, all good. We are on track, all good. The project is going like a runaway train. We're still on track, we just don't know which one. I do not know the reaction to my partner to that, please. Okay, I will ask him next time. We are going off the rails sometimes. And finally, as always, we are starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So, I just wanted to bring up how creative we can get together as teams, right? So now that we have warmed up a little bit, let's look at the meat of the matter. And first things first, I will present to you a short quiz, and I'm expecting to see what are your thoughts to those questions, right? The first one that we have. What do you think is the number one factor for team success? Okay.
Clarity.
Clarity, okay.
Communication.
Communication, okay.
Common goal.
Oh my God, okay.
Cooperation.
Cooperation, okay. There.
Positivity.
Sorry.
Positivity.
Positivity, okay.
Psychological safety.
Very good, okay. After productivity, potential, the psychological safety is the next key word today. Yes, sir.
Effective team leadership.
Okay, very good. And you know what? What do the studies and everything suggest? These are exactly the kind of answers that we hear. And you were on spot, and you were on spot. The number one factor for team success, not to say that the others that you all mentioned are not important. The number one factor is to have the challenge, a clear and compelling goal that inspires action. So all those of you who understand, who already knew this, please give yourselves a little bit of applause. And I wouldn't mind if you want to, like, too sleepy, too long a session, if you want to take a break, coffee break, and come back. So I'll be back. Okay, so the number one factor for team success is the challenge, a clear and compelling goal that inspires action. Let's move on to the second question. How do you establish trust within a team? Think of yourself as a team manager, team leader. If you had to start building trust within your team, how would you do that? What would be the first steps you would?
No blame.
No blame. Okay.
An icebreaker.
Icebreaker. Okay, very good. I think you established trust. Lot of icebreakers. Okay. Next. Anyone else? Okay.
Honesty.
Sorry.
Honesty.
Honesty. Very good. Okay.
Establishing subject matter
matter experts.
Okay. All right. So those were very good answers again. So a lot of those answers that we saw today were kind of external or outward bound. What actually establishes trust is working together and achieving real results. Have you noticed when you start working in a team, you kind of inherently start understanding how the chemistry of that team is. How do you respond to each other? Trust builds from actions. So the number one reason or the method to go about building trust is to make sure you focus on achieving small and big wins together. The other factors, all our team building exercises, communication, honesty, everything is very good. But if you have to focus on building trust, that's the number one thing we should be talking about. What do you think is the size of real teams? Easy one. Or maybe not.
No bigger than 2 pizzas. That's the common DevOps.
Perfect.
We only have budget for one pizza.
Oh, okay. Budget restraint, right? Okay.
I think it's project dependent.
So, yes, it is a lot. It is constant context defined, but we want to see what works the best and what has the studies and research shown to work best under all circumstances. So we can have project dependent, a large teams, but what we have seen is 10 to 12 people are ideal in a team circumstances. Beyond that, let's say if you have a large project, what tends to happen is the teams tend to break into sub-teams. And then what we start challenge, then there is no clear path of accountability or clarity in those. So if you can try to keep the teams limited to 10 to 12 people, that's how you will be able to establish the culture of teams and make sure your teams are as effective as possible. Okay, we talked about the fundamental requirements. What do you think are some of the other basic requirements of teams? And a lot of that we've already covered. It's kind of summing together everything. So I will not belabor this point. We will. A group of small people with complementary skills who are committed to a common purpose, performance goals, and approach for which they hold mutually accountable. So this is kind of wrapping up everything that we have learned so far. This is an important one, and let's talk about it a little bit. What do you do about key skill gaps? Let's say you're putting a team together. Yes.
I would say like pair off and like the people that have the skill gaps, like 2 people work together and kind of come up with a solution. Like kind of pair off like within the team.
You're getting one of the goodie there. Good answer. That's a good answer. Anyone else wants to take an attempt? Yes.
I was gonna say communicate the gaps to fill those who don't know.
Okay. All right. Any more trials? Yes.
You gotta provide opportunities to fill those gaps. You need training and education outside of the group.
Absolutely. Yes, exactly. So that's what, so the point here is when we are putting together a team and we are putting together something which is critical, we cannot insist on having all the skills at the very outset. That's a recipe for disaster. We will never be able to find somebody who has all the skills that we need, or we will spend unnecessary time doing that. So the best approach is you hire or you look for team members who have that necessary potential, and then you bring them up to speed to fill that skill gap. So the most common answer we've always observed is insisting on the right skills gap before the team gets started, or we do not worry about skills, we totally leave start to the circumstances, which are also not correct. The right answer is a lot of skill development happens on job. At the same time, we must assess the potential. We are not denying that we should have the perfect skills that is needed for a project or enterprise, but we should have the right potential and a lot of training that happens on the job. Okay, so far so good. Let's talk a little bit about team leaders. How should you pick the team leader? If you were putting together a team for AI project, ML, what's the latest fad?
I don't know, we'd have to ask the AI.
Oh yeah, have to ask the AI. Okay. How should you pick that? Yes, go ahead.
The one who has the most trust amongst the rest of the team.
Sorry, say that
The
again.
one who the rest of the team trusts.
Absolutely, that's a very good answer.
Do we put trust above expertise though?
A good point to deliver.
The only thing with expertise is that like an expert could be really good at it, but they don't necessarily want to lead the team.
Absolutely.
Like they would want to be like in more of a consulting role.
I only have 2 goodies today.
And you're walking away with both of them.
Okay, so that's a very good point. So what we want to understand today is trust, skills, experience. Everything is extremely critical. We are not saying that's not important. If we have to rate them on a scale of 1 to 10, they will be 7, 8. But what we want to understand today, what's a 10? What's my must have, not good to have, or should have. So the number 1, how should you pick the team leader? We talked about best skills, experience, or who is on top of our hierarchy. But effective team leaders are always distinguished by their attitude that they really do need the team to succeed, which kind of ties the point to making sure the team trusts them, that they're invested in their success. They may not have the perfect skills, the perfect experience, but they are somebody who are invested. So make sure when we have these points tomorrow, when you go out into the world and make your successful claims. What is the most important trait of team leaders?
Humility,
Okay,
being able to set aside that ego.
okay,
Empathy.
good. Anyone?
Transparency.
Accessibility.
Yeah, very good. Yes, ma'am.
The ability to like maintain the vision and to keep people focused.
Absolutely. So, all of you, humility, accessibility, all of those will fall under 2 categories of people skills and managerial skills. This is tying back to our same idea that we discussed. It is a strong belief in the team's purpose and the other attributes which makes sure the person or the team leader is able to strike a perfect balance between action and patience to make sure the goal is achieved and to ensure the team he is invested in developing the team as required. Right? So, make sense? Absolutely. Okay. How important is the choice of the team leader? Let's say you have a team and there is no clear team leader that you can appoint. What do you do about that? What do you think would be your approach? Yes, go ahead.
I will have the team vote on who's the most goal-oriented,
Okay.
humble person.
Okay. Anyone else? If there is no team leader to a team, or how important is the choice? So what we tend to do in our environment is we always make sure there is an official team leader appointed. But what we have observed is he should have all the skills, but we forget the fact that even for a team leader, a lot of understanding or knowledge comes after he has been appointed to the job. So as leaders, we need to invest not just in making sure the right person with the right attitude, skills, and experience is appointed as a team leader. We are also investing in their learning and development after they have been done so. So that's something to take away from here. Now, what do you do if a clear team leader doesn't emerge? I will give that away. The right choice is not always to make sure you are appointing someone. The right choice is to observe the environment in which your teams are operating, making sure if the team is able to meet its objective, you do not really need to appoint a formal team leader. If it is related to reporting or you have something like a hierarchy, you can have like a namesake, but an official team leader is not needed in this case. In fact, it will introduce unnecessary bureaucracy to the teams. That's the observation. All right? Okay. Last question. What does shared leadership mean? We gave away the answer now. Does that resonate with you? Okay, all right. So this was the first thing. Any other blind spots or things that you think you have observed in your personal experience related to these biases that we bring to our teams when we form them? Anything anybody would like to share? Yes, go
What do
ahead.
you do if you have a bad leader?
If you have the bad leader.
Yeah, like if we're talking about all these teams, but like,
How would you define bad leader?
yeah, I don't know how to quantify it. And this is a very
So, is he not good at communication? Is he not good at keeping the team on track, meeting the team's objectives?
yeah, I feel like it could be all of the above. Like there's a lack of people skills. There's also a lack of almost experience with like how to manage a project from that leadership.
So, if it is all of that, you will have to change, take a tough decision and change.
Yeah.
There is, yes, we have, as we talked about in the first part of the session, right? You have to look at the skill potential. It cannot be from ground zero. If he's especially supposed to be a team leader. So make sure any such questions that you have, you can tie it back to the basic principles we learned. Okay? All right, so the next, are we keeping on track? All right. Okay, so the next topic that we have is teams a three-lens perspective. Now, here we want to talk about what exactly are the components of the team? If we have to look at teams as a black box, what are the outputs? What are the inputs? We'll start with outputs. What do you think a team produces? What's the result of having a team?
A product or a service?
Excellent.
Excellent.
Some sort of value.
You could be my co-presenter today. So, what exactly a team delivers, in other words, is that any other example that you can think of will broadly fall into these three categories. You have performance results. By that I mean, let's say a company is trying to meet its revenue objectives or the sales objectives, those would come under performance results. You have collective work products that the team is trying to achieve. You're building a technology which is bigger than the individuals that are working on the team. And what we tend to often forget is personal growth. These three are the sides of an equilateral triangle, if I can put it like that. At any point, putting together a team, make sure we are trying to balance this. So it could be sometimes an isosceles or a scaling, 12th high school maths. Still remember that? Okay. So if we have to look at those three as the vertices of a triangle, try to make sure we are meeting these key objectives. We cannot forego what our overall strategy or vision is, which is performance results. We cannot forego the quality of the deliverables that we are doing or the tools we are building, the technologies that we have. And at the same time, we cannot forego what, in the process of achieving, all of our team members are learning through the process. So these broadly are the outputs of the team. We talked about outputs. Next, I want to focus on what are the key elements that make the inputs to this team to be able to achieve these outputs. Anything?
yeah, it sounds like skills, attitude.
Yeah. Close. So these three are the pillars through which we want to achieve those vertices of our hopefully equilateral triangle. We want to focus on commitment, skills, and accountability. These are the three inputs that any team needs to be able to really be a high-performing one. Under commitment, we talked about having a specific goal, a common approach, and a meaningful purpose. In skills, we have people skills, managerial skills, problem-solving, technical, and functional. And then, even though we do have these two categories, we should not go away from the accountability. These three tie together to make sure all our outputs that we talked about from a team's perspective are achieved. Okay, so I'll give you a second to read that. These are some of the common observations that studies have found on the structure and how teams are organized, what they're supposed to achieve. So this is really tying up the other principles we studied. When we work with teams, we should not really be focused on the two vertices. Always keep in mind the third vertex, which is of personal growth and the knowledge that people from those teams will be taking away. We must remember, when you look back, successful team experiences are memorable because of what is accomplished and what each member learns in the process. If you take 30 seconds, if you think of the most interesting projects or the most challenging team environments you have been on, does it only stand out because of the final goal and objective you achieved? Would you refute that? Or was it also important in the process of what you learned, what were the accomplishments, how throughout the trajectory you were able to grow, not as a person, but also in the skills that you were pursuing, right? So that is a very important aspect of any of our teams, which in the world of shipping fast software, making sure the timings, the development cycles are short, we often tend to overgo, but that's the short-sightedness which we should try to minimize.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Can you go back to the previous slide? On your last part, for me, some of my most memorable experiences don't have to do with each member learning everything. It's working with people who are subject matter, material, I keep forgetting that word, subject matter experts.
Right.
And the enjoyment of working with people who are very knowledgeable, who enjoy working together and come up with a finished project. It doesn't have to necessarily learn anything, but if we're just successful and enjoy what we're doing. So help me understand that in regard to what we got up there.
Exactly. So, in my view, I wouldn't separate the enjoyment with the learning process, right? If I am enjoying something, inherently I've also learned as being part of the team. So that's what this means. Okay. What we have seen so far, there is a discipline, there is a very strict understanding to how teams should be constructed, and some of the elements, as we saw from the answers earlier on the sessions, are counterintuitive to what we generally approach team building with. So, humility, kindness, approachability, all of those skills are good. As I said, it's all there, up there, but the topmost ones, the ones that you should be hitting on, is what we have discussed here. All right, let's move on to the next section. Common approaches to building high team performance. I have outlined here 8 common approaches that we should focus on when we are looking at teams. The first 2 is already something we have discussed. The third one, if you look at there, pay particular attention to first meetings and actions. Can you give me an example of when you started off with your team and a project, there were some of the things that you made sure you did at the very instance to set the tone or the objective or the culture of the team? Anyone?
Stayed on topic?
Very good. That's very good. That's very good. What else? I'll give you...
Defining the goal right up front, I mean, that's the most important part.
That's good, yeah. Making sure what's the agenda, that's for sure. Like, for example, if I have to give you an instance from my work life, I have 2 very, very different clients. One always insists on having a video camera on, and the other, I do not know anybody on that team for the past 1 year. We've been on the project, nobody switches on the camera. So, making sure you set the tone and those principles and the instances are the very right, setting the tone of the teams in the very instance, and when you're starting off, working together with that objective is extremely critical. Okay. Last, we'll just talk about a little bit on the exploiting the power of positive feedback and reward. So, how many of you have experienced upward feedback, as in you are able to give feedback to your team leads, to your managers, leaders, not just the downward feedback, where the leaders evaluate your performance, show of hands, okay. And has it been like a one-on-one conversation, or it's more anonymous? More anonymous, right? Okay, that's usually, so there is value in approaching those kind of feedback sessions in person, and I have tried that personally, and it has always worked. Anonymous is really good, but you would really like to understand some of the feedback points that maybe your teammate has shared with you. Can elaborate that, you're not clear, and those kind of documentation does not help or go a long way there. So if I am really serious about getting feedback from my team, it's like an upward feedback, how I approach is making sure when I enter the conversation, I bring up, you know what, over the past 6 months or the time that we have been on the project, this is I realized this is something I did not do great on, or this is something I would have done differently. So begin with your own observations about where you could have done things differently, and that opens up a whole world of, it's a whole different world where you will have really honest and meaningful conversations where both of you can take that away. So something on the lines of those examples, feel free to let me know if you have any such strategies that you have worked. This has always worked for me almost every time. Anything you want to share? Okay, great, go ahead.
If you have a good culture that doesn't blame others, and that starts at the top, you can take responsibility for something that went wrong and identify ways to improve it. If you have a boss who's capable of saying, hey, I recognize I could have done this better, I could have handled this differently in the future, let's figure out what different ways we can approach it. That's something that, in my experience, goes down to the team because they feel comfortable saying, okay, I made this mistake. No one's trying to pin the blame on somebody else.
You know, that's a very, very good point. And every time I put together a team for any of the projects, I just tend to revisit some of the team's basics. And to tie down to your point, the blame game, whenever we encounter such a situation, we should have the mentality or the approach of finding out where the blame lies. Not on the person, but what's the process related to it? Where did we go wrong in the process? Instead of, hey, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. Maybe the communication channel wasn't clear. Maybe the reporting channel wasn't clear. Focus on the process instead of people when we are trying to solve a problem or when we have a situation where we are going to get accustomed to blaming others for the not so good instances that we would have. So thank you for sharing that. Okay.
You got a question all the way in.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
One of the things that I've always done is when we have a team working on a project and the customer's involved, I tell the customer, if you have a problem, you bring it to me. If you have something good to say, take it to my boss.
Oh yeah. So it ties down praise in public, but share any negative feedback in private. That's another good strategy. Always works, right? So make sure if there's something to share, you can share it with your customers, your clients, something good that you have to share. And the first instance of anything not working, bring it individually to the person that is in question, and then only take up the channel if you really need to. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to the last section, all about productivity. Do you like that little bit of cartoon there? Ironic, right? I want to share with you a small video here. So let me take. No, this doesn't work. Okay.
Take it in mind, even a limit.
You can't say.
Okay.
Show over with your extreme.
Oh,
This is stuff that's real.
Take it in mind, even a limit.
Just slide them all, not to the right. Keep it around. No, you gotta go for the. Which video? This one?
no, this one, yeah.
This one?
No.
Oh, which one?
This one.
That's just.
frozen. Okay. Can you minimize that too? Thank you. Okay. So, yeah. Okay, talking about productivity and engaged some 2 minutes being non-productive. Sorry about that. Has anybody seen that Charlie Chaplin movie? Anybody knows, aware of that? So why did I bring that up? To really drive home the point that all of the principles we talk about in management today, under productivity, are really coming from very sound foundation of when we started with our industrial revolution, right? So we will try and tie down those principles to some of the very key techniques we use under productivity. Now, we understand the concept of productivity as, yep, I have this checklist, let's tick that off, these are my top priority items. But on a larger scale, why do we want, as a team leader, we really want to be productive in our judgments and opinions, in our work products, in making sure we give the right direction to our team, in the allocation of resources, in the mistakes that we are working towards or detecting, and also in terms of making sure we are coaching and training our people and our subordinates that we are working with. So outside getting all of these achieved, that's really why we need to be productive. Now, let's spend some time on this. When we talk about, or when we talk about productivity, we really want to understand what that means on a larger scale. So, we have to broaden our lens of how we view productivity, more so as we go up the organizational ladder. So, number one, when we look at your output, you have to tie it down to the output of your organization and the output of all the ones that are under your influence. These are really the leverage points that we are talking about. So what that means is, let's say you have 3 tasks at hand. For example, you have to have a one-on-one coaching with your team colleague. Number 2, you have to prepare a strategy document for your enterprise. And number 3, you have to clear a whole inbox of your emails. What would you prioritize in this case among these 3 examples?
Emails every time.
Emails every time.
Don't have to talk to anybody.
Hence, we do not want to go through the common route in this session. We want to challenge those, immediate actions that we tend towards or gravitate towards. Yes, you had an answer.
The one-on-one.
Okay, and why would that be?
I like to put people first, make them feel important.
Okay, all right. Anyone else with a different take?
It's a good opportunity too to talk about personal growth, focus on how they're learning and contributing.
Absolutely. Now, yes, and this is where really I want to introduce this concept of leverage. Each of the tasks that you have chosen has an associated leverage with it. That means it does not only impact you, it also impacts surrounding organizations or people under your influence. Have you heard of that quote by Archimedes? Give me the right lever and I will move the world. Yeah, that's what we are talking about in leverage here. So by this principle, we are free to adopt all of those that the logic or the reasoning that you mentioned. You would like to prioritize one-on-one sessions and things like that. But here, if we are talking about taking home this principle, We want to, in this case, I would focus on having those strategy documents in place first if I were to be productive. Why? Because I'm applying this principle. That strategy document is not just limited to me. It is an organizational strategy document, which is going to say, let's the sales team, the HR team, on how we are doing business, what are the markets we are pursuing. In that case, it has influence. It has a larger reaching influence. If we choose the colleague, which is a very good choice indeed, but that does not influence or has that large scale of influence in that decision. Does that make sense? Is that something contradictory to what we would gravitate towards, right? And that is not immediately effective. So tomorrow or from next time, when you have a list of items or to-dos, check, check, check. Of course, we like to do that at the end of the day. It's very gratifying to be finishing those. But I want you to stop and pause and reflect. What are some of the activities that are not only impacting me, but it's also impacting my organization, surrounding organization? What's the lever that is moving, which one is having the highest leverage? And that's how I would approach it. Okay, so to really end this all, we will briefly touch upon some of the productivity principles. This is really my favorite part. You know, I'm always on lookout of how can I be more productive, be more efficient. I've listed some of those. Anything else that comes to your mind that maybe you would like to share with the group here?
I use value stream mapping, which is a version of personal conduct.
Okay, very good. Anyone else? Or we don't want to be productive. This is like too much. Yes.
One of the best things for productivity is to be relaxed in your productivity. If
Okay.
you're not taking time for you while you're doing all of this, your productivity will hit zero.
Absolutely.
Programmers do lousy after the 16th hour, staring at the screen. Right? That's just reality. You gotta take time.
That's a very, very good point. I've shared that. Anyone else? What has worked for you so far? If you had to pick up one of the ones that I have listed here, what do you think in your experience has really made an impact? Or feel free to say if you're not using one. We don't really have to use. Now I'll give you a second. Yes.
2-minute delegation, Eisenhower, those work really well for me.
Okay, very nice. So I'll give you 30 seconds by the time you think about it, but I want to just tie this down to what the video that we saw. If you look at principles of batching or even Pareto principles, when in our industrial time, the batching was really to make sure you have your production line simplified. That's why we batch produce, so that you're not introducing unnecessary overheads into your production cycle. And that's how it has flown into our current lifestyle or our workplaces. The similar is the principle with Pareto principles, which is 20-80, right? Is that Pareto principle?
Yes.
Yes. What does that mean? So when we were doing quality assessment during our industrial age, we were focusing on, let's say we are doing 20 out of 100, we are evaluating 20 stocks and making sure that 20 stocks meet our quality criteria. And that's something which has, because that would tend to give away if there is really any issue with our production or our quality processes. That's how it has come right now, and that's where we are using all of these productivity principles in our current workspaces. So it's really important to understand the principles or the origins behind it, so you would appreciate in depth and why they work for you, rather than just following them blindly. Okay, so that brings up to the end of our 4 topics. We talked about some of the blind checks that we want to mitigate in our life. We talked about those equilateral triangle of team foundation building. And we talked about some of the key measures of how to make sure we have high team performance. And last, we talked about productivity. So I want to share a small video. I hope we don't get into non-productive time again. I will take 30 seconds. If it doesn't work, we will wrap it up here.
technology.
I think I'm going to be able to, if you can pay for me that. Yeah.
The Apollo flight computers did 85,000 calculations per second, which is pretty good. It seems like a lot. It's great, for instance. And in 1969, it was great. The iPhone that I bet everybody in this room has, either in their pocket or their purse or on their chair next to them, that iPhone can do 5 trillion calculations per second. It will take the computer that flew us to the moon 681 days to do the work that your iPhone does in 1 second. In fact, the lunar module computers aren't as smart as the microwave robot, as the brain of the microwave robot. But those computers weren't primitive. They were basic. What's really amazing is what the scientists and engineers at MIT who designed the programming computer were able to do with their 85,000 seconds a minute. This is the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, and we all know, sort of intellectually or from history class, that that was a stunning achievement and an important achievement. But we've actually lost track of 2 really important elements of the moon landing. The first is how hard it was to do. And the second is the way it's changed the way we all live right now. When John Kennedy said, let's go to the moon, it was literally impossible. It was May 1961, he gave a speech saying, we need to go to the moon, we need to put a man on the moon, bring him home safely by the end of the decade, 8 years. There was no rocket capable of flying to the moon, there was no spaceship capable of landing on the moon, there were no spacesuits to get out and walk around on the moon, there was no computer small enough or smart enough to do calculations to fly to the moon, there was no space ice cream. And so NASA and the people who worked, the army of people who worked on Apollo, did what I came to think of as create a culture of innovation on demand. In fact, flying to the moon required a culture of innovation on demand. NASA looked everywhere for answers to its problems, and it tried to be open-minded. The lunar rover, the moon buggy that the astronauts drove around in on the surface of the moon, that was designed and engineered by Carver and General Motors. The spacesuits that the astronauts wore, the Apollo spacesuits, were designed and manufactured by Claytex, which sold itself to NASA with a slightly cheeky observation that they were familiar with garments that needed to be form-fitting and flexible. And the remarkable thing when you learn about the era is that the innovation, the creativity, the engineering often exceeded our ability to make and get that didn't slow anybody down. The spacesuits were high-tech marvels, 21 layers of nested fabric that were strong enough to stop a micrometeorite, but flexible enough to allow astronauts to do their work and move. Every stitch sewn by hand. The heat shield on the back of the space capsule, as it came back through the atmosphere at 25,000 miles an hour, the heat shield was composed of a material that was created for the Apollo program. It did not exist before that. But how did you get it onto the back of the spaceship? There was a honeycomb matrix on the back of the spaceship. Tiny little cells about the size of the holes in a beehive. And there were 380,000 of those holes. And each one of them was filled. A human being using a tractor, one cell. And what about that marvelous lunar module computer? The lunar module computer literally paved the way for the way we live now. Apollo created the space age, but what it really created is the digital age. Here on your iPhone, your laptop is the descendant of that remarkable computer that was created in 1968, 1969. That computer had a total of 73 kilobytes of memory. That's what we flew to the moon. If you get an email every day in the morning from the New York Times with today's headlines, that email may actually have, or may require more space than the lunar module computer had. And every 1 and 0 in that computer, 389,000 ones and zeros in the memory, every 1 and 0 was sewn by hand with a woman with a long needle and a wire sitting in a specialized loom. It took 24 women at a Raytheon factory in Waltham 6 weeks to sew 73 kilobytes of memory for one Apollo computer. So it really was impossible to fly to the moon. Kennedy said, let's do it. But the vision of going to the moon fired the imagination of Americans. It fired the imagination of people all over the world, in fact. And we like being asked to do something impossible and then turning it around and making it possible. We often look back at that era of flying to the moon and think, why don't we do great things like that now? What happened to us? What was that? How come we're not the country we were then? And I think the most important connection to take out of the 50th anniversary of the moon landing is that we are still that country now. We, of course, are the people who invented the internet. We decoded the genome. You're carrying all of human knowledge available to you in your pocket with a flick of the finger, even if you mostly use it to check your stock prices and play solitaire. We need to be asked though. That's what leadership is in part. Leadership is understanding what a stretch goal that is worthy of the people you work with is, and how to ask them to do it, and how that goal can inspire them. If you're running a company, if you're running an organization, if you're running a country, knowing what the stretch goal is that needs to be achieved and asking people to do it, that is part of being a leader. And that is the second thing. We need to be asked to marshal our resources. If we're asked, we will do it. We always rise to the occasion. We think of the astronauts as the heroes of the moon story. Bold, courageous, and adventurous. And they were, in fact. But the other heroes of the moon story were the engineers, the scientists, and factory workers, and frankly, managers here on Earth, who actually made the moon missions possible. For every hour of spaceflight during Apollo, for every hour of moonwalking, 1 million hours of work was done on this. 10 lifetimes of work were done for every hour of spaceflight or spacewalking. That, it turns out, is what it takes to make the impossible possible. Thank you all very much.
All right, so that brings us to the end of our session. Thank you so much to all the team members. We can go to the moon. And to all the team leaders, you can lead us to the moon. So with that, I appreciate all your attention here and thank you so much. You have your gifts with you. Thank you.